Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Cyrus and this is Tuntum Network in Accra, Ghana. Be sure to subscribe and click on the bell when you find value on this platform. Now, according to UNESCO, not me, according to the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, Africa's film and audiovisual industry currently contribute about $5 billion to the continent's total GDP. Now, Africa's combined GDP is estimated to be approximately $3.6 trillion, which means Africa's movie industry contributes less than 1% of Africa's combined GDP. The figure itself is actually 0.13%. But even with this figure, that still doesn't provide a true state of Africa's movie industry, in the sense that Nigeria's movie industry alone contributes more than half of that percentage. I repeat, Nigeria's movie industry alone contributes more than 50% of the total output from Africa. The rest of African countries with some sizable contributions to the movie industry are South Africa, Kenya, and Tanzania. The North African countries used to be dominant in a short while in the 90s, but have now become location sites for foreign filmmakers. Obviously, this percentage is super low for 54 countries, but the potential cuts through the roof. As a matter of fact, UNESCO estimates that the sector could contribute $20 billion by the end of this year if constraints like lack of infrastructure and piracy were addressed. However, that's not going to be possible since the challenges are nowhere near being resolved, ladies and gentlemen. The rest of the world are light years ahead of us as a result of this. Take, for instance, the Asia-Pacific movie industry. It combines for $145 billion. So Africa has a serious catching up to do. Now, the reason for my interest in this topic is the potential I see in this industry in transforming the perception and the stereotype the world has about Africa, and most importantly, how it could provide a sustainable form of employment to many of Africa's unemployed youth. Ladies and gentlemen, did you know that it is estimated that approximately 70% of sub-Saharan Africans are below the ages of 30? Let that sink in for a minute, ladies and gentlemen. When you cut off the countries above the Sahara Desert in Africa, the rest of we the black countries have 70% of us whose ages are below 30. And it's estimated that between 20 to 30% of sub-Saharan Africans are actively on social media, one way or the other. Now, tell me what that suggests in line with the film and movie industry for the purpose of employing the teeming youth in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to submit to you that Africa's unemployment situation can be resolved if leadership or businesses will learn how to work out their ways with every industry in Africa. From sports, movies, and music, the talent pool is enormously untouched and the industry is begging for serious investment. But for the purposes of the heading of this topic, let's restrict ourselves to the film industry. I want to suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, that if we can fix these two challenges, which I'm about to share with you on Africa, we could be on track to solve a huge chunk of Africa's unemployment problems using the film industry. Number one is this. We have to resolve what is internationally referred to as a film village. The process of making films actually starts with the idea or storyline, but to bring that to reality requires the location, equipment, and the cast to create the scenes, ladies and gentlemen. But this is where we fall short the most in Africa. Africa as a whole has very few film villages. Locations to shoot videos is usually one of the challenges, ladies and gentlemen. And that's after the challenge of equipment. The governments don't invest in them. Businesses don't invest, just as movie executives don't. And because of the lack of investment, there isn't any form of standardization when it comes to how much a new actor, for instance, should be paid. Payment in this industry, just like in many other disciplines in the art industry, are unstructured and therefore lacks the interest from young people. There isn't a roadmap nor art schools dedicated to the people on the lower levels who want to either produce or become actors. Those who use the local dialects don't hold to any standards. There isn't any requirement for subtitles and all. Ladies and gentlemen, the entire industry is left in the hands of those who want to take it and whatever they want to do with it. These challenges make our output substandard and hence doesn't receive any form of continental or international recognition. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a problem. The bedrock on which our movies should stand is non-existent. A proper film village will include a location built and specifically designated for the arts and having the necessary cameras and all other filmmaking equipment. Creative minds have to create and leave the rest of the business to those whose roles it is to put together the location, the direction, and the equipment to act. So far, only few countries in Africa have something close to having a complete film village. 3 of such places are found in Nigeria alone, and therefore explains why Nigeria movie industry is ahead of the curve. Did you know that on the average, Nigeria produces 2,500 movies per year? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, they produce 2,500 movies every year. When the rest of Southern, Eastern, and Western Africa combine for a little over 500 movies in 1 year, Nigeria alone produces on the average 2,500 movies, ladies and gentlemen. This is why they are the face of African movies. And they face the challenges every country faces, but yet produces. The problem is not the patronage, like many people claim. The problem is, first of all, the quality of the production itself, ladies and gentlemen, especially when it comes to the storylines of the movies. Patronage and piracy issues are everywhere in the world. So it is not peculiar to Africa. A movie executive will have to figure out modern ways of selling their movies or their works. The fundamental issue has to do with the kind of stories we tell. Our storylines are just too predictable and common. That is the truth. The nature of our drama stories, for instance, is just too unrealistic. The stories are too predictable and common, like I said, and in addition to that, the acting in itself usually subpar or usually centered around same faces all the time. So our production ran a course for until the faces fade away, leaving a hole behind for another to fill. There isn't much variety. That is what I'm trying to say. So when you have all these challenges coupled with bad camera shots and bad sound, bad location and editing, you cannot expect to have the kind of audience Hollywood is having. There is a huge disconnect between having a story, writing the story, and acting out the story, ladies and gentlemen. Many of the people you find actively on social media below the ages of 30 are purely actors. The movie industry could find a place for many of them, whether in front of the camera or behind the camera. But all these people will have to figure it out on their own from the scratch when you live in Africa. This is our plight. This is why no matter the size of the movie industry globally, we may never hold any significant stake in it. So we have to figure out how to establish film villages, whether by government policy, by private businesses, or by individual production executives. And we have to up our level of creativity. Ladies and gentlemen, we can do way better than what we've done so far. Sometimes you watch a movie from Africa which leaves you wondering whether the screenplay writer ran out of ideas. And some of these guys are renowned and experienced filmmakers. And you wonder how that happened. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you this in conclusion. This industry is begging for investment. The money sitting in that industry is just enormous, and many young people will be employed in that process. Let's own it as Africans. I'm Cyrus, and thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and click on the bell for more of my videos if today is your first time watching us. I'll see you in the next one very soon. Until then, God bless you, and it's bye-bye for now.